Cool. All right. We've really got the claps down. It's my favorite part of the show.
I don't like that we're back to the claps. I miss the beer can clinks.
Well, the next time that we'll be probably together might be Katowice. So that's
won't be Katowice.
Oh, yeah, it won't be. Maybe it'll be Pro League.
Oh. Yeah.
Maybe Pro League.
Maybe Pro League.
We started on a potential good note there, and now we're back down.
I know, right back into
the
dumps. That's my bad.
No, that's okay. It's a Tuesday. It's a Wednesday. Is it Tuesday?
It's a Tuesday.
Bro, I've lost track of days. It's something cruel out here, man.
The nice life
when half the time.
It's hard when you don't have any. Yeah, when you don't have any playoff broadcasts to really let you know when the weekend comes in. Everything kind of gets jumbled up.
And I've been doing the 3/4 a.m. going to beds because I'm staying up late grinding Anubis with Harry and Hugo. Scrawny joined us last night. We were playing with Dinko, and Hawk has been in there. Yumi, a bunch of they're all just fucking coming around. We've been playing a lot of Anubis. Been getting in there hours.
Get me back in the little pug system over this winter break. I'm gonna play some. I gotta learn Anubis.
Yeah, well that's why we've been putting so much time into it, right? Because it's new map in the pool. Obviously for I guess Harry, Hugo, myself and stuff, we won't be casting that until next year. But I guess for Connor and Launders and you and Anders, it's gonna be really important, right?
Yeah, well, yeah. That's I didn't even really think about that. I am gonna be casting it in 2 weeks, so. Maybe, I should play some...
You're going to have to be giving expert analysis, Jason, on it.
But that'll be easy.
What do you think these teams are missing out on that they could be doing?
I was looking forward to learning at least a little bit of the layout during the show match, and then they were no clipping with shotguns and no gravity jumping over, and I was like, you know what? I'm not even gonna try. Not even gonna try.
This is the thing when a new map comes out, right? Is I think we spoke a little bit about this last time round, but once you establish the timings, the names of things is really important, right? If you're doing this from a team perspective, obviously for a casting analysis perspective, it's a little bit different. But from a team perspective, I remember the first thing when approaching a map was, hey, let's all first of all get on the same page with naming all the spots. Right, so we have at least common communication, and then once we have a common vocabulary of how we talk about the map, then let's work out the timings. Okay, who gets here first, and then can that be easily negated with a smoke or something like that? And then you just keep adding all those different layers on top, right? Of what's a good angle to hold, and what's a good crossfire, and that's where it starts to get really deep. And that's the cool thing, right? I guess we're saying, yeah, you're going to need to talk about the map at a high level, but you also get to take the stance of this is the newest map to the pool, and now we get to see the pros on it for the first time in a Tier 1 event, and this is a learning experience. And that is even cooler, I think. Because then your analysis doesn't have to be on the desk segment so much about they did this good or they did this poorly. It's they did this, and this is what and this the other team didn't know how to react, and because we don't know, we get to learn, and you get to look at things from a different perspective, which is kind of fun. That's why I liked it when all these new maps come in, to see what the pros do with the tools that are available to them. But we skipped the intro I wanted to start with, gents. Can we come back to Anubis?
Yeah. Go
okay.
For your intro.
So I have a little notebook in front of me here to take timestamps. And when I wrote down Talk Encounter episode 20 podcast /timestamps, it got me thinking back to the whole core concept and philosophy of this bad boy that we do right here, which is just the three of us having a conversation. And then I'm thinking timestamps breaks it up into very formulaic or topic-y. So I just had to remind myself, and I want to remind the viewer and the two of you, that for me, this is like a chat, and I don't want to break. I'm happy to write down when we start talking about things in a little bit more detail. But I would like it, if you are a fan of the show, right, that this is something that you don't have to listen to it in completion in one set or at all if you don't want. But it's probably to be consumed as three guys talking about Counter-Strike, not three guys bringing up different topics at certain points and all giving their opinion and then moving on to the next like we're doing a fucking debate in university or something. So I don't know. That was my morning's existential crisis about timestamps.
No,
so I hope you all understand that.
I think you're fine. I started the timestamp thing initially because it's just I also don't want it to be we have to, go from topic to topic, or if, let's say we've wrapped up on something, but you remember that there's something else you want to say, we should bring it up again, right? And you should be able to talk about it. It shouldn't be we can't talk about this in this episode anymore. I think it's just probably because there are some episodes, let's say the post-major episode or the post whatever, there's some drama, and that's gonna be a topic in that episode for sure. And that just sort of, when we generally start talking about it, to have it might be helpful for people who perhaps can't listen to the whole thing like the first time they, or as soon as the episode is out. But yeah, absolutely, to know that the talking point, like the timestamps, are mostly there as sort of a rough kind of timeline.
Timestamps are defined by the conversation, not the conversation defined by the timestamps.
That's it, Jason.
Boom.
You've nailed it there. And the first timestamp
Someone's
is
had
at
plenty
4,
of coffee already.
It's at 4 minutes, and it's about timestamps at 4 minutes. So that's the first timestamp that I have jotted down in my notebook.
That's so meta.
That's some Inception fucking level thing in there.
I just, because the timestamp thing, like I see people going, yeah, it'd be nice to have timestamp, and I know it would be, but because we're just chatting, to like write it down on a keyboard, that's a little bit jarring. First of all, with the setup I have, and a notepad seems doable, but now I'm just holding a notepad while I'm talking.
Yeah,
to
you're
two
gonna
guys
fall
over
into the same
Teams.
trap I did, is where you're gonna notice that we moved on to a new topic of conversation, and you don't know what time it started, so you're gonna guess like, 10 seconds back we started talking about this.
Man, so now I'm not gonna let the timestamps get to me like that.
It's
I'm gonna
a
leave.
thankless
do that.
job, Chad.
Don't let the timestamps win.
Timestamps will not control me. They will, but I also wanted to do a little bit of a temperature check, because last time round, Yanko, there was a drill.
Now we're
And,
playing past
there
the war.
were-
But there hasn't been drilling like for a couple of days, I guess. But I don't really know how many days have passed. I don't know anything. I've never mishandled jet lag this badly.
Oh, really?
Like this time
Okay.
around.
Ooh.
Like it's so actually insanely stupid. I'm
What did
giving
you
up
do?
hope. Well, I mean, I basically fucked up day one when, here's the thing about the last episode. First, it was supposed to be done last Monday while I was still in the US.
Oh, here we go.
But Jason forgot a cable for his microphone, so we couldn't really do that, even though I
Felt
went
good to get that off your
Guitar
chest?
Shop or whatever the fuck its name is to buy a microphone because I didn't have one with me. But that's okay. So then we were going to do it once I was back home. And I went to take a nap that day I was back, set an alarm and everything an hour before the podcast. Woke up 2.5 hours after we were scheduled to start the podcast, of course. And that was the mistake number one, falling asleep during the day for 6 hours, which is a big no-no if you're trying to, not get screwed by jet lag. You can take a nap a little bit to get you through to like 10, 11 p.m. before you pass out and don't wake up until the next morning. So it's been touch and go ever since.
but you know what?
Even my usual plan where I just, one night I get, blackout drunk and that puts me to bed for 8 hours, then I should be fine the next day. Even that didn't work.
It's the
I'm out
holidays
of
though
options,
already,
Jason.
right? It's already the holidays. It feels like Christmas, right?
And if you sleep through an alarm, your body needed it.
That's true.
Probably,
Body
which
really
is
needed it.
scary a little bit, but yeah. So
I
I've
don't know.
decided that I can't keep living like this. So today is probably the last day I allow myself to be
okay.
jet
This is getting
lagged.
grim.
I was gonna say that I thought I was expecting a darker turn there. I'm glad you.
No. I'm just gonna try the blackout drunk thing again, but with more
Conviction.
more conviction. Yes, Chad.
Okay.
Exactly.
All
Great.
right.
Yeah.
A bit more
Perfect.
follow through.
I've
been saying that.
I won't half-ass it this time around, Jason. Don't worry.
I've been saying the
Amen.
same thing about this like nightmare sleeping pattern I've had, but the thing is, it's like I'm kind of justifying doing it because I'm having fun, and it's work. I'm learning about the map. Jason, are you jet lagged? You just got home. Have you even been able to be jet lagged yet?
Yeah, I passed out at I think I passed out at 8:30, 8 o'clock on the couch last night, and moved into the bed around 11. And yeah, the nice thing is when you come back this direction, your jet lag occurs later in the day, right? It occurs in the fucking evening.
You see, the same thing
So-
happened to me, Jason, except for when I did wake up from the couch and move to bed, I couldn't sleep for 5 hours.
Oh no, that's not ideal.
So
I
yeah.
hate to see that.
Please.
I'm going to travel back to Oz in a couple of weeks' time, so I'm going to be interested to see what it's like with the jet lag there, because the only other times I've gone home to Australia in the last, I haven't been in, there'd be about 3 years, but when I went last time, I was only there for a week, and when I went before, it was literally flying in and out, because I was doing an ASUS ROG thing. I went there for 3 days, jumped out of a fucking plane, flew away. It was so I haven't been home to Australia in a long time to even know what it feels like. I assume I'm going to get wrecked, because it's that 24-hour plus amount of
Yeah,
travel.
Australia and Asia are hard for jet lag.
Yeah, I don't know what it's going to be like, but I'm only go for about 2 weeks, so she'll be right.
And you don't subscribe to the blackout drunk strategy.
No, I normally
You're not a follower of the.
Yeah, I just do the stay awake. Like if you land early, just try and stay awake.
Yeah.
And if you land late, then don't eat and try and sleep. But sometimes it works. Sometimes it's a mystery. They obviously say there's better ways. You know what would be a better way is if every single human got to fly in business class and we didn't have fucking economy anymore, which is just an insane way to spend 12 to 14 to even fucking 18 hours on an airplane now that you can fly directly from London to Perth. It's just fucking mental. Right? Why did we create that shithole of economy? Why didn't we just start with business? Why aren't we treating people like we all want to be treated? There should only be business, and it should just, be the same price.
I think they actually did start that way. I feel like I've seen like pictures of like the early passenger airplanes, and everyone's got a ton of space. Everyone's chilling. You can smoke in the main cabin. Everyone's having a good time.
Yeah, that's definitely a good time, smoking in a small enclosed space. It's an amazing time, Jason. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
My mum.
Well, the problem is they wanted to make it more affordable, Chad. Like, you can have only business class flights, but then you would never be able to fly, and you would have to take like a ship to Brazil for 18 days from Australia.
Man, I don't know. There's some mega rich people out there.
And even there,
spread the love.
You maybe couldn't afford first class.
What if everything was just free? What if we just lived in this tranquil
I was going to say,
society?
we've had this conversation
Someone who
before.
has some experience with it, not the best idea.
Not all it's cracked up to be.
Not all it's propped up to be.
I'm more thinking about the Jetson type utopia, boys.
It's interesting, but like it's impossible. It's impossible because there's always going to be people who want to work more to get more, right? Like. And
I'm trying to be in the future, Yanko. I'm trying to be like the Jetsons, where we have spacecraft and we can fucking teleport and shit. Like, we need to be. See,
I actually get that reference, but I was surprised with myself.
It's a good cartoon.
It's a shit cartoon. It's like probably the worst one you could find at the time on Cartoon Network.
Yeah, I think that's because.
Sorry for shitting on your childhood, but yeah.
Well, I think it's mega old.
Gargoyles was a good cartoon.
I don't remember Gargoyles. I remember SWAT Cats.
Gargoyles was a really good cartoon.
Insanely good. I love
Jetsons came out in fucking 1962.
Really?
Yeah,
wow. I didn't think it was that old.
It was after, I think, I'm assuming it was they looked at the success of the Flintstones. That was the other direction,
Yeah, true. Yeah,
let's
that's
do the
true.
Flintstones except out in the future.
Did you guys get SWAT Cats or Street Sharks?
No, we didn't get any of those.
But I think this was interesting, Chad, what you want to start talking about, though, like the utopia or whatever.
Yeah.
I do think, like, in future, like down the line, we would get rid of countries at some point, and we would just be like, hey, we'll just all kind of in this shindig together. I think first it's going to be,
you have to fight aliens first?
Like, you're going to have the EU in Europe, you're going to have, whatever, US and Canada merge. We're going to have South America, going to have continents kind of represent themselves probably a little bit. And then it's going to go on from there. Universal basic income for people who can't take care of themselves. Like, you'd hope there would be so much value or wealth created through, like, innovations from people that there would be so much, like, excess wealth where you could provide those safety nets for people, sort of, and just not really worry about the impact it would have on, I guess, society or whatever.
How many years, Yanko? 100? 200? Think about how far we've come in 100 years.
Couple of centuries at least.
Couple of centuries, okay.
I want to say 400 or 500 years maybe still. Maybe a little bit less.
Do we think that we're evolving
300.
as, or devolving as human beings? I suppose it is evolving. But, like, we're going to change a lot, right? Our bodies are going to change.
Well,
we're going to either be taller or bigger or
I think that's more in
happen?
like, I think the change in body is like thousands of years. Like, it takes for that to really kind of catch up.
Okay.
Yeah, evolution in its own, right? But that's like physically. I think mentally, it's going to go much faster. I feel like, the way of thinking is going to evolve, and the way we look at things, and like the value system, priorities. Like, hopefully it's not going to be, made up points on social media and likes and whatnot, and people are going to focus a little bit more on stuff that actually matters.
It's kind of weird that social media is not a real place. Sorry, Jason. What do you want to say about the utopia?
I was just wondering what the timestamp was going to say for this geopolitical utopian prediction.
So far, I'll just reflect into the timestamps once more. From the start of the show, that would be classified as intro. At 4 minutes, we shifted talking about timestamps, and then at 7 minutes, we shifted talking about Yanko's jet lag, travel, and utopias. So that's where we're at right now.
That's such a cool timestamp, and you look at it like, ooh, this has a little bit of everything. Let's start here.
Yeah. So, but see now, like I'm keeping up with the timestamps, but I also feel like what's the thing at the start of the book? Fuck.
The prelude?
Nah, it's more like you're looking for something. The index.
Oh, the index.
Yeah. I feel like the index right now, but
yeah,
I guess I'm the living index because everything's happening live as we speak. Anyway, should we get into any
Morty episode?
Should we get into anything Counter-Strike related here? Like, 'cause there's a lot of stuff's happened. There's a lot to, like, obviously the reason we ask if you jet lag, Jason just came back from Blast, just concluded yesterday with
Heroic Honor tournament.
See, I've lost the fucking days, man. It wasn't yesterday. We've established today's Tuesday. It was 2 days ago. Yeah. No, well, 3 days ago would be if it was Wednesday. Wait, it is Tuesday, right? We have established.
Today is Tuesday.
Fucking God.
It's the 29th of November.
Oh, it's all falling apart.
Where's my little spinny top thing? I feel like I must be lost in a dream or something right now.
The year of our Lord 2022.
Oh dear.
Oh, do you remember the time of the fidget spinners?
Yeah, I do. They didn't last very long. It's a lot of the fads.
I wasn't in on it. I think it was Machine that was the big one in the fidget spinners.
He was Anders too.
Anders was big into fidget spinners.
That makes sense though. Alex does like to fidget, right? So
and Anders does like to spin. So.
Yeah, both of those things. What's the fad at the moment? Is there anything like that that's being popularized? Is there anything like that the people are playing with?
I don't think so. Nothing along those lines. It's all digital these days. Probably something stupid on TikTok. Maybe people are back to eating Tide Pods or some shit.
That's right. TikTok's that whole thing now. I'm glad that I don't use TikTok, but essentially Instagram has just become TikTok now, right? With just this, you could just keep going with those video stories.
The reels.
It doesn't stop. It's just endless. It's an endless.
That's great. I never have to like stop and think about my life and what I'm doing or anything serious. I can just scroll through all this content again and again.
No self-reflection necessary
when you're watching. And just drown myself in memes. Yeah.
Some of it's good though, like to actually learn and do things, right? I find it depends on what you're looking to watch, right? But there's this one guy, I've got him on my Instagram, and he does lots of things with like plants and fruits and veg and shit, and like what you can do to keep stuff fresher for longer, or like what you could plant from it. And the cool thing is, like, it's stuff that's practical and you can use. Obviously, I'm not going to grow a fucking garden in my house, so some of the planting of things isn't going to work. But to know how to keep something fresher for longer, right? Like, is really good. Into what's he called? Creative Explained. It's just this dude with long hair who's like showing you how to do things around your home.
You should do a garden, Chad. I did a garden.
I should. I don't get enough sun.
It's nice.
There's not enough sun in this building.
Okay.
I would like to live somewhere a little bit bigger. And then that brings me to my next point, which we were going to get into Counter-Strike, but fuck it. All I've been doing while Blast was on is waking up, watching Blast, and then in between watching... playing Anubis late at night, but in between, when there was like either a break or whatever for Blast, I was watching like these YouTube videos, and I've been watching this guy... Young Bloods and a guy called Nick Fry, and these Aussie blokes, and they just Nick the Young Bloods guy's from Western Australia, which is where I'm from, but basically he just lives in this property that he owns in Exmouth, which is way up the coast from Perth, just like on the beach. He just goes out every day with like a jet ski, his fucking truck. He's got his dog with him. He goes spear fishing and everything, like cooks and like catches and cooks whatever. He's out like it's like the dream lifestyle. I don't know. It'd be hard to live that way, but just crazy shit like, you know, there's constantly sharks around and everything, and he has drone footage of all of it. It seems wild, but it's really nice to watch because it's just reminded me of home. But that's the other content I've been consuming. So that's all I've been doing for that week of Blast is watching videos like that, thinking nature seems fun, playing Anubis and watching Blast. So here we go. We can get into Blast, I guess. This is a good point. Jason, you were there. You were the man on the ground.
I was there.
How was it all from your perspective? Because yours would be the closest to the truth, I would imagine.
In what sense? Like just in terms of how the event went overall? I mean...
Yeah, it looked like a fun event. Was it a fun event?
It was good. It was good. I mean, Blast does a really good job in that sense. They're probably the most organized that we have of the TOs in terms of talent knowing their calendar and their life pretty much every single day that you're at the event, so you really kind of know what to expect and what to be prepared for, which was great. And it's one of those, the first 2 days at a Blast event, or at this Blast event, were really fucking rough, because they do kind of, the one criticism I guess you could throw is that they do kind of skip one day. They probably need an extra day or two.
No, they're doing 4 best of 3s a day.
So they don't have the 4 best of 3 days.
Yeah, we kind of left that in the past.
Yeah, those are very long days. I think we touched on the last podcast. Like, I think Anders and I doing 2 best of 3s in the first day took like something mental, like 9 hours from when we were there, from when the start of the game was. It was like 7.5 hours.
The group stage did have a few technical timeouts, like lengthy technical timeouts, which, like, we're obviously doing this by Blast standards, and that's very rare by Blast standards to have those type of little worries. But come the arena, there didn't feel like there was any of those woes, which is good. But I think the reason that those those technical timeouts feel a little bit more compounded during the 4 is because of the 4 best of 3 days, right? You really need to run a perfect day.
Every time you see any kind of extended tech timeout, you just know in the back of everyone's head is just like, oh fuck.
Yeah, getting closer to 1 a.m. unless you get a bunch of 2-0s, right, to make up for it. Because that's the thing, and we talk about this a lot. Like, production crews tend to be just one shift. I know that that's changing in some businesses. I don't know what's going on with Blast in that regard.
I think there's a few positions that switch out, and a few positions that they find ways to give like some extra breaks during the day, but it's nothing to take away, like to fully take away the pain of a long 4 best of 3 day, or 2 back-to-back long best of 3 day, or 4 best of 3 days.
Yeah.
But no, other than that, I mean, it's that they run a tight ship, and it was good. It was fun. And obviously it's in the Royal Arena, which has that same vibe as with ESL and back in the day. I mean, it's a little different now because everything's an IEM, but like back in the day when they still had ESL 1 and Pro League and IEMs were always the most fun to work because there was a certain intensity to them due to the fact that they were like, the product is like more historic and legendary. So when you worked an IEM event, you really felt that importance. And with Blast, when you go to their fall finals in Royal Arena, that's a really special event to them, especially with all the staff being Danish and everything. You can tell that everyone's kind of just fully focused, and everyone is really willing to just go above and beyond and do outside of their role. Yeah, a lot of pride in that event. So that kind of sense and culture and environment really bleeds over to us as talent, which makes it a fun event to work.
Yeah, that's like Cologne, and I guess Katowice to some extension, right? Yeah. And I guess that's one of the things, right? Because this event, and as per the usual, like the production quality from Blast was on point, right? That polish which we expect with the product they put out, it was there, and they continue to deliver, and that's the home court, right? That's the thing. They've refined that event now over the years. We all remember 2017. Well, we don't all remember. We definitely do, the 3 of us. 2017, where we're doing a fucking podcast on the desk because of tech issues, and they were unable to run the first day of play. And then we obviously have the way that Blast has evolved over the years, where they've updated the way they've done some certain things, and now they've fucking got a lot of polish. I think the great thing is, you watch it and it's an entertaining event. That's the key, right? That's paramount here. And that got me questioning more of what we were talking about last week, where like, what do the viewers really want, right? Maybe they do just want franchise Counter-Strike, right? And I don't know. We can return to that conversation too. But I think like in the greater landscape, we discussed the issues with the Blast format before. I think the positioning, you mentioned this, Yanko, to do with this being the fall final and not the world final. The positioning of this event in their system, which they've created, right? That's the only thing that lets this event down. Like if this was their world final, right? This would make this event like the mega, like the top of the Blast Mountain, which would be cool, because now we're going to have that where you guys go to Abu Dhabi or whatever, right?
Abu Dhabi.
So you guys are heading there to do the world finals, and that's definitely not going to have the same level of like grandeur as what this event did because of the crowd and everything like that. So I think that's what hurts it a little bit, but
it does, I think, but also I don't think it's just that. Well, because remember too, the first time they did the world final, it actually took place in January, which was also weird.
Yeah.
It took place the next year. So yeah, the World Final is
That's
kind of
true.
an odd one, I think, until they really establish that event as something special and something unique. I think the biggest problem with it is obviously it being the last event of the year. Like even like I'm not going to name any names, but even the players are fucking exhausted right now. It's one of those things where it feels like it's one of those things that's kind of tough to look forward to. It's going to be great when you get there. But also, I mean, just to go back, because we've touched on this a million times, we don't have to go too deep into it, but the major being right before it, like that feels the problem with the major not being the last event is that it feels like it should be the capstone of a season. It feels like you should be able to like kind of be winding down and just soak in the completion of the major and say, these are our world champions. And they get, this 2-week, 3-week span of breathing room where every focus is on how good they played.
Yeah.
And then you go to an event. And I mean, thank God Blast has done such a good job of establishing Copenhagen. But it's kind of, I know I saw like a bunch of Reddit comments and Twitter comments about how people are just fried from doing essentially
Viewer lethargy,
are just really fried. I know, like as good as the event was, the viewership dropped massively from 2021 to 2022, and there's about a million reasons and contextual things we could go into about that one if you guys really wanted to. But I mean, it was a steep, like I think it was like a 500,000 viewer drop off from like 800 some thousand to 320,000 or something like that.
But this thing getting moved, right? The majors for 2024 being moved is hopefully what happens. If that happens, that fixes a lot of these problems, right? That we're talking, like we know what the issue needs to be. The majors need to be at the end of the seasons. If that happens, and then everybody else can move their events around accordingly in that time, things are just going to start making a lot more sense because of that. Because on the road to the major, it would have been fantastic to have the fall finals as a lead-in event for a lot of these different teams, as an arena event before the major. But it being after kind of changes that spin on it, right? So like if it's at the end, regardless of what happens and the result is at the major every time, everything in the lead-in has part of the story. Now the story, we're already at the end of the book, but it's still going. We're like, well, we kind of already know how we feel 2022 ended, but it's not. Right? There's still these couple of extra pages left over. And then this is where you get in that murky residue where, well, Na'Vi now are flirting with this 6-man. They're bringing in MPL from the Academy team reported, well, they've said it themselves, to play certain maps. Other teams, you go, well, are they discussing a roster change? What's going to happen with G2? They don't have their coach at the moment, right? You can get into a lot of these conversations come this point. And I guess if it's a building block in the lead into the major, then that story will always stay true, right? Like, so by just this framing being changed, I think we know that's key. We have to hope that happens. Now, I want to stick around the Blast stuff here, but fuck it.
Well, let's talk about some results. Unless you got something specifically about Blast as in terms of the event itself.
No, I don't know. I wanted to kind of get Yanko in here. I don't know if he had anything to add to the situation, because it's like we mentioned where the event is. Obviously, the format hurts a little bit as well, and I think when you see the World Finals, more so OG being qualified for that with the results that they had, there's just a couple things here. Like this is the thing. Like Blast put out the most entertaining event, right? From the major this year is the contrast that everybody's looking at right now. And Blast put out this really polished product. It was entertaining, but it comes with these things which are issues in the sense of like format, or the sense of like the point system or where it ends up in the year, or what. Some of them are in their control, some of them are out of it. But then the thing is, does that matter, right? You mentioned the viewer drop off. Well, the viewer drop off we could explain away for a couple of reasons. Are any of those reasons overlapping? Like, are they reasons that people wouldn't have wanted to tune in to Blast? It doesn't matter. Should we all just have like closed circuit Counter-Strike? I don't know. I feel this conversation, maybe it's not for us to have. Maybe it's for us to say to the viewer who's listening right now, hey, how do you like to consume Counter-Strike? Put it in the YouTube comments of this video, and it might give us some talking points going forward. Because some people, offer up their opinion about this, but we never really just sit here and ask. And I think that's the key, is because the way the viewer wants to consume the content is probably the best, right? Like the best source of information we can have. And I know it's only going to be individuals, but that's really how we can start here. We need to know, like, do you support teams? Do you support players, right? Or do you just want to watch the best Counter-Strike? Or do you want to watch the fairest Counter-Strike, which is open circuit, right? Do you want to watch just the same names go up against each other and you prefer it like that, like an NBA or an NFL or something where it's the same teams and it's the familiar faces and the big signings? Or do you want it to be the fact that anybody, Tom, Dick, Harry, his dog and the cat can make a team and be, competing? Like this Do they want it in an
That'd be
arena?
kinda cool.
Do they want it in an arena in a constant environment like we get? Do they want it in something that's, like 3,000 to 4,000 people, a bit more like central stage and a bit more intimate, right? So it still has what type of environments are we talking for this stuff? Because right now we have just evolved quickly in like 20 years of how we give Counter-Strike out to the world. But a lot of that in modern day is defined by what has been sold on by these companies a lot of the time who don't have hardcore Counter-Strike people selling the stuff. All we have as the bare bones for Counter-Strike is MR15, a minute 55 round time. We use 20-second freeze time. We got 40-second bomb time. And how do we want to display that 5v5 over the MR15? That's it. That should be like the base thought. But what we have is like minutes sold, right? So the minutes watched that's been sold onto sponsors.
Every TO always will present the broadcast in the way that suits them the best. Like if they had a lot of games over the course of the tournament, then probably the metric that they're going to discuss is going to be, minutes watched or total minutes watched or whatever it is. And if it's, of course, they had a really good series in the tournament that was very exciting, like your Navi phase or Navi Fury or whatever, and it's a really close game, goes into OT, which always draws more viewers, then they're going to say, oh, peak viewership was this much, right? So, I mean, that's their job. That's how they need to do it in order to present the numbers in the nicest way possible to attract sponsors and attract money. And that's fine. I think for me personally, you think about it, it's probably a combination of good CS and also names in terms of that the viewers are going to be familiar with it and establish a sort of a emotional attachment to or connection, right? Like everyone loves a cool storyline, whether it's an underdog storyline, whether it's a redemption storyline, whether it's a coming of age storyline, right? Like that's why we talk about content and building these storylines as broadcasters and narratives, because that's where you build that sort of a relationship and create that attachment for viewers to more than just the Counter-Strike. Because if it was only about who plays good Counter-Strike, well, that would be kind of boring. Like for all the shit I give occasionally to Maniac on the desk for being a romantic, that's, the nicer way to do it and a cooler way to look at things and think about things.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, I think there's also the matches, right? Like the styles of the way teams play, because like FaZe always seems to offer up an exciting game to watch, right? There's always going to be someone who gets like a massive clutch round or someone that gets like a fucking round with a bunch of one taps or something. Like their game always seems exciting to watch. Similar, maybe not always with a Na'Vi, right? But most of the time with a Na'Vi. Like they say in fighting, right? Styles make fights, right? Well, do we think the same thing in Counter-Strike?
Yeah.
Oh, for sure.
I think so as well. Definitely not to the same extent. But yeah, comparing someone like FaZe and the way they play to the way outsiders play, even though it's great Counter-Strike and it's very efficient and whatnot, absolutely for the viewer, probably not as entertaining. But I think to most people, that's probably secondary to, like, look, for example, the Imperial games we had this year. Like, you could feel like everyone was pulling for them, right? Because, like, they had a pretty cool storyline and, especially if you watch them play over the years, you probably feel a little bit of an attachment to that whole story, to that narrative and whatnot, right? Like, so remember how it was when they were playing Cloud9 in Antwerp, when they were playing Complexity at the RMR for Rio, even playing Cloud9 in Rio in the O2 game. So I think that's like some of the more cooler parts, storylines, whatever of what we're doing here, right? And not all of them have to be as romantic as, the Last Dance, the most overused term in probably Counter-Strike broadcasting or esports in general. But yeah, it can be that. It can be, FaZe, like putting it all together, like and for Kerrigan to finally kind of solve the puzzle for an extended period of time, potentially for the greatest player of all time to finally find team success. And, there's all these little storylines like that, or big storylines that you can tap into and sort of feed off of.
That's also Go on, Chad.
I was just gonna say, like, I love all the storyline stuff. The thing is, I just look at the major grand final. Okay, it was the major grand final, and it was a 16-12, 16-5. The 16-12 Mirage game, Heroic were always playing catch up, right? They were never in the lead. I think it was 13-8 in favor of Outsiders at one point, and then it was closed 15-12, right? So it was a game where, okay, maybe Heroic like chipped back in with a couple of rounds, but really never felt like they were breaking through. Then you compare that to this grand final, which was 3 maps, 16-11, 16-12, 19-16, and there was it was back and forth. There was lots of clutches, right? There was lots of intense moments. When you get to Mirage, Brokey having to win those one-on-ones with the AWP and stuff, it goes all the way to overtime. It's, so the actual game of Counter-Strike was more entertaining, like without a doubt. You watch the two matches side by side. You take away the crowd, you take away everything else. You could take away the context. You just know that they're both grand finals. The game of Counter-Strike in one compared to the other was much more exciting, right? This is the thing, and this is the thing we always talk about when we can do everything. We can present all the storylines, all the stats, all the information for everybody to know. Everything can be in place. But if the game of Counter-Strike is boring, maybe not boring, right? But it's just not mega exciting. It doesn't have all the clutch moments, all those exciting moments. It doesn't have that flow. It's not going to be an exciting game. It's like a match of football you go and watch that just ends 0-0 and it's a draw.
Yeah, England, USA. Right,
but this shit can happen, right? And that's
care about that.
I was watching it. I was so fucking mad. I was like, wait, aren't there shootouts in this group stage? I was like, motherfucker.
Yeah. Do you think you're gonna make it through, Jason?
I like to think so. We got a whole little I don't know. I guess there's like a little political backdrop to the Iran game, which is kind of as far as storyline goes, that makes me excited.
I didn't even know that who was in your group. I'm having a look now.
Wales, Iran, England, and USA.
Oh dear! And you've got 2 draws.
Yeah, 2 draws.
So you need this win.
We have to win this one.
Wales and England in the same group, of course.
If Australia beat Denmark, we go through.
Nice.
We're probably not going to beat Denmark, so I don't think that really matters.
Well, Denmark lost to the French recently, so it's doable.
Switzerland on Friday. Brazil, Switzerland, and Cameroon. Okay.
Well,
look at us,
4 years
all of us
ago
in the World Cup.
We were also in a group with Brazil and Switzerland.
Oh, really?
That's crazy. Yeah, exactly.
Fucking hell. All right.
But yeah, I agree with you, Chad, 100%. Like, there's nothing you can do if a game is simply not as entertaining. Not even either the names of teams or the style, right? But there's just something that's out of your control. What you do is you do your best as a storyteller and all the content we do, the lead up, right, to kind of present it and present the exciting parts. And in the Counter-Strike, well, it is what it is. I remember like a couple of years back to back, like 2017 to 2018 in the Super Bowl, you had like one of the most entertaining Super Bowls ever when the Eagles played the Patriots, right? And it's just this crazy game, right? Like everyone was tuning in. It was so exciting, lots of points, sick calls, sick individual plays, right? Then the next year we have the Patriots play the Rams, like a 13-3 game, right? Which just like, you know, when the wide receiver is the MVP of the Super Bowl, you know, that's how you know it was a shit Super Bowl, right? Like, so that's what happened in that one. And even though you had, again, like Tom Brady's in another Super Bowl and you have all these storylines and some players on the other side and whatnot, it's still like, it's a fucking 13-3 game, man. It's like, you guys are doing your best. And, you know, like, it's not even that it was a stomp, it's just like a kind of boring, low-scoring game, right? Like, that's like your 16-5 or a 16-10 with like a lot of saving, and the game was never really in question.
Yeah, and that I think is like, you know, I have to keep reminding myself of that as just someone a bit more involved in the space, right? Because I think like a lot of it gets conflated. Like, this was a bad event, but really, like, no, it was the games that were bad, right? Like, or just weren't exciting. And then that's why I come back, and that's why I'm asking this question of, like, maybe the viewer does just want more, like, franchise-heavy stuff. Because if we can guarantee that teams like FaZe, who are going to play exciting Counter-Strike, are there deep in events all the time, like, look, if I go to a UFC fight, I don't have the technical understanding.
Chad, you also you can't please everyone, right? Like, you can't please people all the time. Like, you shouldn't be trying to do that even. It's like, you know, people like different things. For example, with Blast events, like, one of the things with, like, these finals is, like, usually there's always at least one team that's missing, or, like, one or two teams, right? Like, you didn't have Vitality at the fall finals, right?
No, I don't think they qualified. They didn't
For
qualify.
example, right? Or you obviously didn't have outsiders who just won the major, but they just came a little bit out of nowhere, so to speak. So there's always like going to be this like one or two teams are missing, but that gives an opportunity for someone else to do something. Like Cloud9 obviously wasn't also at this one, if you guys still want to put them in those types of conversations. But yeah, so that's something that it's not really like that every time there's the best team there, but it feels like there's enough of the world's best teams that you could still get some
Have an
good
exciting
matchups
event,
and
yeah.
have an exciting event, which is fine, because one of the best things you've said over the years is like, if everything is hype, then nothing is hype, right? Like, can't have,
True,
not every
yeah.
tournament can be, oh, this is like the most important matchups in tournaments, like especially if it comes after the major. That's again why we want for the majors to be at the end, because then it takes away from these tournaments that we have to work at and sort of not necessarily hype them up, but find some meaning for them, right? And talk about like what it means for some of these teams, like we did in Dallas after the Antwerp major, trying to find meaning for some of those wins and thinking that's going to be it for Cloud9 and whatnot. So yeah, I think that's like the thing with the NFL is also this. Sure, like it's a franchise league, but it's 32 teams, and you know you play the teams in your division twice. But you know it can be that some teams that are not in the same conference, like in the regular season, they might meet once every 4 years, for example, right? So you would have these matchups, you know, Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, they're not in the same conference. Is like if they don't meet in the Super Bowl, like they played like maybe 3 times, 4 times over like 12, 13, 14 years that they've been in the league. So even if it's a regular season game, like you're kind of hyped to see that. And I think now we're in a spot where we're not oversaturated anymore, like we maybe were a couple of years back, where you had, you know, Navi FaZe, for example, you would see them play every other tournament, right? Which then kind of loses its purpose. But also it's not as scarce, right? Where you're really like kind of when it happens, you are like insanely hyped about it, because this might be the only time this year that you see, you know, FaZe versus Navi, that you see, for example, Zai will go up against Simple, right? In a true head-to-head. So we're somewhere in between now, and I think it's still, the circuit is sort of still ironing itself out in that sense, in terms of how many games we get like that. And I think that's all right. And I think that's also great, because it gives space to tournaments like Pro League to be different and be more fun and be more about something else, and not just about this is the biggest arena and this tournament is so important and there's a lot of prize money and points and whatnot. It's like, yes, that's great, tournaments with a lot on the line, as we've seen in the major, right? But if you have 7 of those in a year, do they really all, like, how much do all of them matter in between themselves, you know?
So really, we're looking for something that's a bit of everything, right? We want to make sure that we do have these events, and this is the thing overall. Like in my mind, if we had like Katowice, Cologne, Copenhagen, right, and it made like it. The thing that's an 8-team event, which is the finish of a group stage, right? Like the way that it's structured, I don't look at it as the way that it's structured. I don't go and connect the dots of, oh, they qualified in the group stage months ago, and now that, like, I kind of look at it, okay, well, these are the teams where they're at in Counter-Strike right now. Like NIP just made these roster changes. I don't look and see how they qualified when they qualified a couple months ago in the group stage or through the showdown or whatever, right? Obviously, you need to look at that to contextualize for the viewer, but in terms of like the Counter-Strike that's being played at that moment, it's that Counter-Strike that's being played in that moment. So just that format there, I think, adds that hurdle for them. If Blast can work that out and they can just have this event in the Royal Arena as their marquee event, maybe they expand it to 16 teams, you know, make it something so more, I don't know. I'm talking out of my arse here. But if they can make that event so it's on that same level of grandeur in terms of the amount of potential participants of a certain scale, and then it's just a big event with a big prize pool and everything like that, sick. It'll join, because like in terms of the crowd and the environment, everything you get there, it's up there with the big arena events, right? I think that's the only thing that it's kind of missing. And for a lot of the viewers, right, like they probably don't care about that because they are getting their entertainment value. But in maybe the prestige for the players, in a way, it could add a bit more. This is why it was great that Heroic won, because it meant so much, obviously, for the KD and Heroic storyline, that Denmark as well. Like that added a whole extra layer to what that event meant. right?
Yeah, they got very fortunate with that storyline with Heroic kind of saving the day, especially considering Heroic was almost knocked out in the quarters as well. G2 almost ruined everything.
That's a curious point there, Jason. I'm going to put a mark on that one right there because I know we're going to want to return to that.
Yeah.
G2 versus... fuck it. I'm going to jump into it now. G2 versus Heroic. Does it make the way that you look at G2 different knowing they lost to Heroic who eventually won the event?
Nope.
Okay. Well, I tried.
Yeah,
fair enough.
I mean, I wish it did, but I mean, G2's expectations are just too high with this roster that they have. And I mean, just like that series... wasn't even like that series 2 wasn't even necessarily that close, right? It was 16-8, 16-6 and 16-12. So I don't even necessarily it was really just like one competitive map, and it was nice seeing G2 kind of pop off the way they did on Nuke, but we all knew they had that peak in them already. It's just about being there consistently.
We just expect them to be in finals, right? Like this team and this, it's like what you would always say when you're talking about your time in FaZe. Like the expectation of this team is to be in finals and be winning trophies and shit, right? Like that's just the nature of G2. They're just expected to be a top 5 team all the time.
And no matter how much positive you want to take away from that, it just kind of gets dumpstered when on the other side of the bracket you have Alexi B and NIP making it further yet again in another tournament.
Yeah, well, see, but that's the thing. Like we're measuring by interesting little markers there. Because in these events, right, they didn't play the major. That's their own fault. But they lost to Liquid and they lost to Heroic at this event. Those are the teams that eliminated them from the tournament. So there wasn't a lot of games to be played, to be fair. They only played 3 best of 3s in total.
So also, why are you losing to Liquid as well?
Oh, yeah. No, that's what I'm saying.
Right? Like, so, sure, but these are teams that are definitely beatable. Like, Heroic did win the tournament and they played good Counter-Strike, but, they're not such a dominant force where you're thinking. The problem is also you look at that game and how they lose, and on the last map they get a decent first half, like 9-6 on Vertigo. They win the pistol ST, so they're up 11-6, and then they just Heroic goes on a 10-1 streak to close out like the deciding
from
map.
like an eco loss as well.
Exactly, right? So the problem is a little bit of it is more of the same for G2, right? Like not being able to kind of have a strong T side when you really just needed to win a big series, right? Like an important series. Like it gets missing again. Go back to their map pick. They pick Mirage. They win Pistol. At OST, they again lose the second round. End up with just 3 rounds on the half. Like you have to find ways to just do more. And this is after you not being playing for what did they say, 5 weeks, 6 weeks, 7 weeks without an official. Like, sure, it sucks to not have officials for so long, but at least you did have fucking time to figure shit out and watch other teams play and kind of steal some of the cool new things the teams were doing at the major, right? So
I don't know what their home map's meant to be. That's something that bothers me a bit with G2. Like,
true.
I just don't know what their best map is. I don't think they know what their best map is. That also comes as a symptom of not being able to play officials, but you should have a pretty good idea of practice, like what you're really good on. But maybe that's the thing. Maybe in practice they were quite good on everything. But if you're beating everybody in practice, or if you're having good prac results, then that could be contextualized by people either, not being at the major or coming back from the major. Maybe they're not like at 100%. Because this is where the ramping for all the teams is different, right? And I loved this from Tommy all those years ago, where he would like say, "This is this team's Super Bowl." Well, for G2, anything is this Super Bowl at the moment, right? They just have to fucking win something. They just have to, not the trophy necessarily, but go deep, make sure they're getting victories. Like every match has that level of kind of pressure because of how long it's been between anything even remotely of what we expect of them. And I think that is something that probably plagues them, right? But that's by their own doing. So you can't really let them off the hook for that either.
And I mean, you look at the Heroic series and you have m0NESY, Nico, Hunter all above, the 1.10 rating for that series. So like, the Stars played well, it feels like. That's kind of what you want to see from G2. Like that's when you are hoping to see them win series, and they just couldn't really.
The lack of T sides was atrocious for G2 at this event. I mean, the only especially in that series, the only T side they had that put any significant rounds on the board was that Nuke T side, and that was just them winning out of the gates off virtue of having economic advantage and having such a big lead. Like they didn't ever actually, when they were forced to have a T side that could actually take advantage and economy away from the CTs, it was just like, nope, you have no chance. You have no opportunities.
Yeah, once they're established, right? So it's like,
Yep.
yeah, I don't know. It's one
I
of
think-
these. Yeah,
I think their team just feels, when I watch them, they just don't seem to have like a good cohesion of play styles. Like I don't know. It just feels like they're like too passive for like current days of Counter-Strike on like an individual level, like from a
the
broad
decision
spectrum.
making so strange, and it feels like slow. And certain times
Yeah.
it looks like it's either being like they're either thinking too much or they're not thinking enough. Like I think it was in the Liquid game. I want to check here, but there was like a round where they lost Nico outside on Nuke. I think it was. Let me just fucking find this here. Make sure I'm not talking out of my ass, which is pretty common. G2 versus Liquid.
Just say it with
Here we go.
confidence, and we'd never expect it.
They didn't play them on. Who was it they played on? Oh, this was early against Heroic, I think, where they like aggressed lobby. Nico died outside after maybe going 1-for-1, and they aggressed lobby, and the two players in top site, they were chilling.
Pushing a squeaky door?
And JK's pushed into Squeaky and Monacy's
Yeah.
pushed up into radio. But then the two guys in top side, they didn't reboost top hut to get rafter control, or they didn't drop down the vent. So everybody was top side. And then Monacy has to go back and look at ramp because they could have gone outside around to ramp. And then JKS isn't sure if he needs to be watching the main walk in or the lobby walk in. And then they get caught off guard and they lose that round. I think
I
Nico
remember
got
this
2
round.
kills. I think he got 2 kills outside in warehouse, and they didn't deal with the space that they had lost appropriately. They had taken the space, right? But there wasn't the correct response from everybody. Like it was
They just feel like they had no confidence in that setup, despite the fact that it was like I said it at the time, I think during the cast too, because I remember this round specifically. I was just like, they just like don't seem to realize how big of an advantage they have in terms of this positioning.
yeah.
Like they didn't seem comfortable in it whatsoever. Monacy overextended into radio room, missed a shot, got killed. JKS got hard cleared, and then it was like, well, okay, round's over, like sick.
It looked like they did, and we all know this. We've all been at home and we've been getting smashed in a fucking in a game on Nuke on the CT side, and we say, fuck it, let's all just push lobby. And you push lobby, and there's nobody in lobby, and everyone kind of looks at each other like, well, where do we go now? Right? It's kind of what it looked like for them. They got the space, and they're like, well, no one's fucking here. We don't have everything covered. We're fucked. And it's just some bad Vertigo as well. It always looks so stringy on their Vertigo with how indecisive they are. Okay, we know we've lost ramp control. They could be walking up scaff, but let's do this weird fucking awkward timing where we find ourselves in no man's land between sight and short. We get spammed, we get mollied out of position. None of the fights are favorable. We die. It's like, man, like I don't know what's off there. Is it? I don't know. I mean, obviously, I'm a bit more invested in how these boys play than other teams. So I look at it and I just go, this just fucking sucks.
The biggest problem is sort of they're lacking identity at the moment, right? Like you mentioned, their map pool as well. They have no idea probably what their best map is at this point. Stylistically, right? Like the change ever since Suxi was brought in, probably they're still getting a little bit adjusted to that. I don't know, even though it should have been enough time, especially with the amount of time they've had to practice around the major. And yeah, we'll see if they decide to change things up. Who are they going to get as their coach? Is it going to be Kassad? Is it going to be someone else? Like what their plans are going to be for next year, really. But yeah, as you were talking about Super Bowls and stuff, and their every event being a Super Bowl for them, it's like, especially when you miss the major, the fall final, and then the world final is really, you expect them to have done better at the fall final, right? Like not necessarily even making it further, just like
It's again
not
the
having
quality
shit
of Counter-Strike they
T-sides,
play.
man, after 2 months.
Yeah.
Please.
Yeah,
It's the quality of
I
Counter-Strike.
test failed really hard for G2.
It was a hard event with a lot of good teams there in terms of them being able to win it or go mega deep, but it's the type of Counter-Strike. I think that's the thing, right? If they go to the World Finals and the type of Counter-Strike's better and every game's close or whatever, because they're going to be against good teams again, right? That for me, and if they are going to change roster, then this is just a waste of time again. Like they only really got 2 months with this roster. They're in the lead-in for the major, didn't qualify, and then the team basically dead after that.
Well,
Like,
I don't know
which
how
would be
you change
so
roster if you're G2 because you don't have a coach right now.
Oh, well, there's lots of problems that they have right now. So, Swanee's doing the coaching, but in the main coach position, I get what you're saying. They haven't
But
signed a new official coach.
I don't
but
know if if they're planning on keeping him long term, fine. But
I guess it depends on
Okay.
the results.
yeah,
So he's kind of maybe trying to fight for a bit of a
Between
job
rock
right
and a
here.
hard place.
Yeah. Well, we did mention Heroic. Do we want to go back to them? 'Cause
Yes.
We managed to go from Heroic to
Because-
G2. Heroic's a good one.
Yes, and I feel like I can do a good job of separating their Counter-Strike from everything else, really. and they are playing some really good Counter-Strike and have been for quite a while, and the way they approach it like makes a lot of sense and whatnot. And I also like, Cadian has grown on me over the years, and like I can appreciate
Welcome.
what he does for the team as a leader and for those guys on a sort of an emotional level as well, and the bond that they've created and stuff. But can we please stop pretending that like it's all, how can I say it, like that his redemption arc doesn't have like a big fucking stain on it from the cheating.
That's why it's a redemption arc.
That's part of it.
You gotta
right?
have the stain.
Because that framing, Yanko, the thing that you're bringing up is
this is after he sort of made the redemption, after he redeemed himself, is when this happened.
No, but but this is the thing. I know what you're saying. That was in the online era, right? And when they won
Those were
Cologne,
dark
right?
times, Chad.
They won Cologne and they won Pro League. Is that correct?
Well,
why does that feel
yeah,
If
correct?
you want to call it Cologne, but
was
yes,
correct.
they won an online
but it was-
tournament
they-
that was named ESL One Cologne.
Yeah. Well, these are weird times. That's what we were experiencing, right? But they had those results, right, in the online era, and then this whole Hunden situation happens, and then it drags out for a very extensive period of time, and then there's this whole like files getting leaked to Astralis thing and all of that, right? This has really kicked on for a long time. This is part of that redemption arc. Like the thing is,
That's how you see
Cadian and well, because there's two ways this gets looked at, right? There's some people who are in the camp who are like, okay, actually there's three camps here. There's some people like, okay, well, we'll never really know the truth of like what happened with Hunden telling his teammates if he had or hadn't seen anything, right? There's different sides of the story here, and there's going to be assumptions that are made. And that's what happens, right? So there's all these different camps and the way you can look at it. Some people think one way 100%, the other way 100%. Some people are in the middle. But regardless, that has happened. So this is part of that redemption arc because the story all the way back, it's like, okay, so he's playing early CSGO. He played at the first major. He wasn't really mega accepted by the Danish scene. So he ends up getting cast aside, has to go out there and play with Rogue in America. Yeah, comes back, he's playing in North and stuff, then is in this heroic roster and then builds this heroic roster and is this big leader and everything. And then there's all of those different like accomplishments and stuff along the way. Then the cheating thing is like the big one at the very end. And then now it's to winning this trophy. And that's all happened in this 10-year time span basically, right? So this mark that you're talking about, some people will look at it and they will never be Cadian fans or whatever, because of this mark. They believe so like strongly that, yeah, he cheated and this, that, and the other, that they'll never be able to look past that regardless of what happened now. There's other people who are in that middle, more gray area zone, like, well, we're really never going to know what happens.
I like to think like I can go past that, and I feel like I am, but I just don't like the fact, we shouldn't forget about it, that it happened.
But that's the thing though, like when you say forget about it, I'm assuming that puts you on the side of this is where you believe that Hunden, that the teammates knew that the information was given to them while they were playing.
I'm just talking about the part where he made it known to the team that
when Hunden made it known to the team
to this bug, as we know he did because they said it themselves, and they sort of did nothing about it. They said nothing to the org or anyone else. They were just kind of
well, this is where it gets a little bit murky, right? Like because the way that it was it was Stown and Cadian, right, were the two that were given the statement. Is this what we're talking about? Was it the two of them who were given the statement? I forget how
Let's not dig all the way deep into these details. This is my problem with it. Is like it is murky, and I think at this point, like, look, if there's nothing that's going to be done by the leagues and by the other institutions that are supposed to keep up integrity, mostly because those institutions royally fucking suck.
But you see, Jay, I don't care. I don't care about the institution. I don't care about them getting like punished, banned, or whatever. I'm just talking about like your values, like morally as a person.
I don't think anyone forgets about it. But what are you like? You can't bring it up every single time.
My perception, well, but you can't. Like you can if Yanko wants to, right?
But that's
right.
But that also wasn't my quote. I wasn't going to be like, yes, congrats, Kane, but never forget that he didn't like, report Hunden this one time. Like that's not my goal. But also, like that's the reason why you can't and like go out and he's a saint and, whatever. It's like.
Has anyone said he's a saint though?
Well, come on, Jason, don't take me literally. You know what I'm trying to make a fucking point.
I think what Janko's saying is the way, like, it swings, right? Like, you see all of this out there, like, oh yeah, Cadian's always been such a swell guy, like, this guy. When we know, like, from behind the scenes, there's a lot of pros who take issue with the ways that like Cadian likes to celebrate and all that kind of stuff, or maybe they haven't liked him the most in the past. Like, that's been rumors and whatnot, but. Like, the thing is, my experience with Cadian...
I don't give a fuck about celebrating, man. He can celebrate whichever the way he fucking wants. He can tell any player to go fuck himself. Like, that's all part of the game. Like, while you're playing, you just can't fucking cheat. That's not part of the game, right? Or silently condone cheating, right? Or whatever it is. Again, I agree with Jason. Like, it wasn't my point to, like, go super deep into it or anything. As I said, like, I can appreciate Heroic and Cadian for the Counter-Strike they're playing and the leadership he's displaying for that team. And I'm actually happy that they, won a tournament. But for me, that's also something that is going to creep in the back of my head every time. Or one day when he retires, that's going to be a thing that's going to be on his resume.
Yep.
Right? Like,
for sure.
Even if he goes on to win a major with Heroic, like the next one, or they now establish themselves as the best team in the world, and that's great. And I'll go to tournaments and I'll be on podcasts and I'll talk about how great they are as a team, and they're a really tight-knit group, and that helps them in games, and they're playing some really good Counter-Strike and all of that. And one day when there's you're gonna have to look back at the whole thing, like this little fucking shitty thing, unfortunately, like is going to be there, which I don't think really is necessarily a representation of his character as much, but that's probably something that he's going to regret when everything's said and done, that he didn't handle that situation differently as the leader he has been, and sort of kind of understand the importance of that moment at that time.
Well, yeah, I don't know.
Fair. That's all fair.
Yeah, definitely so. I don't know. It's just
been too outrageous with this.
No, you've been reasonable. It's just, I think for me, when I look back at the situation that happened, I just sit here and I go, okay, well, should they have come out and said something? Yeah. Did they come out and say something? No. Okay. Well, that's it. Right. Like I'm not in the side that goes, oh, I think they were actively receiving information from their coach while they were playing. Maybe I'm wrong.
I also don't think that happened.
Yeah. But then if it's just like, okay, well, they should have said something, but they didn't. And can I make a bunch of reasons as to why they probably didn't say something? Yes. Does that mean it's okay? No. What does that mean in the scheme of everything? Okay. Shitty choice at the time. Probably should have handled things differently, but they didn't. And now we're here. And I don't know, maybe that's because I'm getting fucking soft, but I don't even, it's not that I don't think about it. Like, it just constantly exists, but it's not like a black cloud that follows it around for me, because I've always liked watching their style of Counter-Strike and the way that they play. And I know that shouldn't have anything to do with like the moral choices and whatnot, but my relationship with Cadian has always been a good one. That inherently, I suppose, makes me biased, because I've known him for all these years, and he's always seemed like a good lad and always been happy to share a lot of information and time, which is always greatly appreciated. So yeah, I'm not dismissing what you're saying by any means, Janko. I agree with what you're bringing up. For me, it doesn't linger as something that comes out as the first thing when I think about Heroic. For me, I just think about I don't know. The way we talk about it on broadcast, kind of the team side of things, right? It's like they've built a brotherhood over there, and a lot of this adversity that they've gone up against as a core, as a unit, has been against these external things. And as we've just addressed, some of them may be brought on by their own, well, maybe not their own choices, but their own reactions to whatnot. But they've had to battle against that, and the us versus the world mentality that they've been able to build. They look like a team in like a really hardcore sense, like what you would have, like if it was a Disney movie, what you'd imagine a team to be like, right? Like the way that they grab each other's faces and they're fucking like talking, and the only thing that seems to matter in a lot of those moments is the teammates around them, right? And the way that they're always, they conduct themselves a lot like a team would in my like Disney picture in my brain. Does anyone else have that kind of vibe about them? Or
I definitely do. I think it's awesome to watch. And I mean, I think a lot of it, I think it's cool watching like Cadian, when like during the group stage, when him and Stown had that huge round on Vertigo, I forget against who, and Cadian's just up, just like turning to Stown and just hyping him up individually, just telling him he's fucking sick, like he's fucking amazing, and just fucking hyping his boy up and getting him excited. And then you see during like the grand final as well, Stown has like a huge like 1-on-2 clutch, and Cadian's like encouraging him to like enjoy the moment and get the crowd boosted up and having him like take a bow, so to speak, get his moment, his time in the sun. That whole development, I think, has been everything. I mean, I'm the same way. I think that you could probably make a strong case for Cadian being in-game leader of the year. You could probably make a very strong case.
Oh, based
Maybe
off
not-
of like the more literal leader
Jason,
sense in that. I
please.
think he's going with the hardcore leading into
Yeah,
hardcore
it's not just like the in-game strategic stuff, but as a leader, like name another person that you think could have kept this team together and as tight knit of a group and as competitive as they've been across 2 years.
The problem is it's
with
up against
all the fucking
Carrigan, though.
disasters. Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
That's why your argument for this year like immediately would just get snuffed
Exactly.
out because the
Yeah, yeah.
Carrigan situation is. But I understand.
But I don't even. I think even if you put Kerrigan in heroic, I don't know if he would have been able to do it.
No, I know. I think like the literal comparison would come with the resumes and stuff. But the thing is, what you're
Yeah.
talking about is
The intangible stuff outside
exactly
of the server.
right. Like if we were just saying like the maybe most emotional is probably the wrong. Maybe emotional is a good term for it. But like that type of leader, right? Then,
Dude, he is the heart and soul of that team. Like I don't
Oh,
care.
yeah.
Like if you take him out of that team, I imagine that team fucking crumbles. I imagine they fall apart.
yeah. Well,
there's
probably
no
so.
one, I don't think anyone would question that, but that fact doesn't make him the best leader of this year.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, look, like
I think
like
it's just it's
Chad
a,
said,
it's a
Kerrigan with the resume is going to trump it.
Exactly.
But I think there's a real argument and a real tribute that should be given over to Cadian for the fact that he's held this team together in this fashion. Because this team had surely they had about 6 different opportunities over the past 2-3 years to just die, to just break up and be gone.
Sure. But yeah, that just doesn't make him the best leader of this year. That's the thing. Like we have this propensity, and I'm not saying like you do it, Jason, but just like
Yeah, Jason, you
because
fuck.
Dick.
someone's done something good or whatever, like someone's had an accomplishment. Now we want to make it out to be more than it actually is, right? Which in some weird way kind of, what's the word, like
It degrades
it
the actual achievement.
Yeah,
Yeah,
a little bit, right? Which is not the case here in this particular example, right? But just in general as a thing. So I absolutely agree with Heroic that probably no other in-game leader could do it, not because they're good enough, but it's just this sort of a match that makes a lot of sense, right? Like, you know, you look at when Cadian joined the team and how the team became good over time. If you had like, you know, better players at the time or more known players, they probably would have had too much ego to, you know, listen to him and open themselves to that sort of leadership. But these players weren't the kind, or aren't just like, you know, even personality wise aren't like that. So they could really soak that in sort of, and they all became better together, and he is holding that team together. You know, like, do I think if Stone goes to FaZe, let's say, instead of someone there, could he still play really well and maybe make that team better and they could still win trophies? Probably, but would he ever want to really leave as of right now? No, I can't really see that happening. I feel like, you know, people on that team are more like Tabson on Big. Even if they had objectively better opportunities to go somewhere else, they'd rather stick with their, you know, group of people and try to make it, you know, as part of that group. Which also, I mean, inarguably, Heroic always had way higher potential and more chances to actually become the best team in the world and win trophies than necessarily Big ever had. But yeah.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. There. Yeah, I think this conversation about the Heroic roster, we're kind of like broad at the moment with it, but like the Counter-Strike specifics of the way they've been playing the game, a lot of the questions have been about whether they can do it on LAN in a high-pressure environment, right? Because to be that proactive and to be constantly moving around and taking all these gaps, and sometimes it's a bit more individual, right, with the space that's being taken, but really it's being done with very clear communication and expectations that have been set, right? Like, okay, we have this space, we're expecting this rotation. Like, Yabby's walking out fucking monster, or Tessus is making like a launch play up fucking long on overpass. Like, a lot of these maneuvers that they're doing, they have so much trust in one another, and I think that's another thing that builds into this like broader picture that we're talking about with them being a team. Like, they're happier to take these type of risks. They feel more emboldened to take these type of risks because of the type of environment that's been built. And that's another one of the keys of having like a one nationality type of team, I think, is you do get, and it's a little bit different for a lot of Europeans, I know, but there's still that type of pride in that regard. We talked about this being a very strong team, and then on that, they're playing this very reactive, proactive, active type of Counter-Strike here. And it can be a pleasure to watch when it all works. And it's another one of these teams that presents exciting Counter-Strike. I mentioned FaZe before being very explosive and always wanting to fight and having these big multi-kill rounds. Well, heroic rounds of Counter-Strike can be exciting as well. Obviously not so much against outsiders in the major final.
Because they were getting owned.
They were getting fucking destroyed by James. I was actually watching James stream yesterday, the day before. He was playing some Anubis with Norbert, and I think Kicker was in there as well. I was really trying to get that one scoped out from seeing what moves they were up to. But yeah, I don't know. I think this is a good win for Heroic. As we touched on before, a big one on Danish soil in the Royal Arena. That was cool to have all that kind of come together. I was really impressed with the Danish fans, the fact that there were so many of them, especially when there was World Cup games going on. I know that there's a big overlap with Counter-Strike fans and football fans. I also think it was great how much of a turnout there was for Heroic fans as well, right? Because we know that arena's always had a lot of Astralis fans, and now Heroic getting their time in the sun after I was highlighted on the broadcast that last year how they were getting like booed and everything. So it's which is a bit more relevant at the time with the whole cheating stuff probably as well. That's subsided a little bit since then. So all of that was really good. And the conversation about Blast, well, no, not Blast, but a major in Copenhagen, I think like that has to be one of the pitches for a major in the next couple of years. Like this is where it is a bit of a problem for Blast. If they have their circuit right, they might not want to pitch Copenhagen for a major because it will take that away from one of the stops on their circuit for the fall finals.
Same way ESL doesn't really pitch Cologne as a major.
It'd be a good way if they were ever going to change the format of their season and if they wanted to turn the fall finals into a more standalone event with 16 teams. It'd be a good way to kick that off. It'd be a really good way if the first time you kind of change your format to where there's not like a season lead into that event, it's just a standalone tournament, to turn it into a major and get that off and running.
Well, let's get Valve on the line and let's do it this way. Let's get them on the phone. Let's say when they do shift the player range, the major range dates, and it's at the end of the year in 2024, like we can all pray to our Lord Gabe for this, they can make the second major of 2024 the Blast Copenhagen major, and then the following year they can run that. Oh no, they won't be able to if they move the things. Fuck. My plan is gone. My plan was gone. But either way,
you had it for like 20 seconds though.
Yeah, it was a good plan.
It sounded like you were building up into something special.
Moment, yeah.
Well, you guys can see that I think about things live, right? You know, there's nothing pre-planned in my brain. Nothing pre-planned at all. But I think that, we go full circle. But that would be something that would be cool for Blast, I think, to be able to do on there. And that could be lots of fun. Do we want to talk about anything else from this event, like FaZe? I don't like I've already mentioned the OG qualifying for the World Finals thing. I think this is the most egregious thing about the circuit is the way that those points get distributed. Did we talk about it on the last episode?
A little bit. We touched on it.
Yeah, well.
But yeah, OG's essentially, for those listeners who might not have heard, OG's qualified for the World Finals by virtue of essentially winning 2 of the group stages where they got like 80 or 90% of their points or just from doing good at the group stages.
I think it's 2,400 points per group stage. So 5,800 of their points total from a group stage that only partner teams can play in.
And the most egregious part of that, I think, too, is that Navi got 2,000 points for second place of the major.
Yes.
So winning the group stage of Blast as a partner team was worth more points than second place of a major. I honestly, God, I don't even blame Blast. I can't even criticize it. It's obviously an oversight. It's obviously a feature that I hope gets changed. But
last year it was 1,600 points for group win, and they upped it to 2,400 points this year.
Yeah.
So I don't know how much difference that would have made, but
yeah, I don't either. But I mean, whatever they want to do, it's their circuit, it's their partner teams, and they have a lot of conversations with their partner teams, and the partner teams get to have a lot of say in these kind of changes. And it's the same way with ESL. Let's not forget either, the ESL circuit as well over the years had so many egregious issues that we've forgot about 90% of them. It takes a long time for these little things to get ironed out and tweaked. And sometimes you don't notice that something
but-
is so egregious until it's exploited.
But the difference is like it's not for all of the things, but when ESL would do stuff like VP getting invited to that fucking season of Pro League, they got lit the fuck up, right? Like because people were like, no, that's fucking bullshit. And like this is basically the same thing here. Like this is bullshit. Like, and I'm with you. Like, there's definitely room for change, and I'm sure Blast are looking at it to change. But unless it gets spoken about, and like, if the public don't have a problem, this is the thing. If the public don't have a problem, they're still going to tune in. They're going to watch. Fucking fine. Who cares, right? That's one side. The other side is if the public do have a problem. Well, they need to make sure that they let them know that they do have a problem about it. And the only way that the public even hear about this shit, because Blast isn't going to publicly advertise, yo, we're giving 2,400 for OG to top a group stage. Guess what? That roster, by the way, they have now only has 2 players from the 5 that won the one at the start of the year, right?
Yeah.
So then we're not even doing the core 3 rule anymore. So like if I'm saying, we can address this, and if people don't have an issue, then they don't have a fucking issue. That's fine. But here, this is meant to be what this World Finals is meant to be to me. It's an event with $1 million prize pool. It's meant to be the best teams throughout the entire year, right? So you have both major winners being Outsiders and FaZe. You have the EPL winners being Vitality and FaZe. You have the Blast Spring Final winners being Na'Vi. You have the Blast Fall Final winners of being Heroic. And you have Liquid, G2, and OG there. Now, G2 could be in a similar boat of conversation with points as OG. They did make the final of Katowice earlier in the year. Liquid, in more recent times, they've had some good runs. They were in the final of Pro League, so they're getting points for that type of stuff. But those 3 teams are the ones who got off with ranking points, I'm pretty sure. So a conversation could be had about how that's all weighted. But again, if people don't care, then we leave it. Like, Jason, you sound impartial. You sound like you don't really care about it. Like, is it something that you wish they would choose, or you just don't give a fuck?
No, I mean, I wish they would change it. I wish they would fix it. I mean, I think overall they're at a point where I think this entire yearly layout of their season, and the way that they organize their product, I think is. I mean, I mentioned it, I think, a couple episodes ago. I just don't think it's. I think they're in a hard spot, but I think it's bad the way they have things now, just because it's hard to even consider it a spring or a fall split when your events are like 2 weeks. But like, the group stage is in January, the showdown is in what? It was in like April or something. It was like 2 or 3 months. It was like 2 months later, 2.5 months later, and then the final is even like a month and a half after that. So it's kind of like, over the course of 5 months, you have this fall split, but there's only 3 events, and I don't know. It just doesn't feel cohesive to me in any way, and I don't have a good solution for them, because I know real estate in the calendar is hard to come by. But obviously, I'd like to see that changed. Like, I don't think it's good. I don't think it's necessarily good for the circuit. I don't think it's good for the viewership. I don't think it's good for the prestige of the event to have a team be able to do something like that. But I mean, I'm not going to be up in arms about it, to be honest with you. It doesn't piss me off enough to really go crazy.
OG will probably end up winning the event, and they'll be like, yeah, see, we should have been here the whole time.
Yeah.
Well,
that would be the concept.
I think like the point system is one thing. The other problem is the format of the groups, right? Like, if it were a little bit better, then I mean, can you really blame them? Like, they had to beat like good teams along the way in best of 3 series, probably multiple teams or teams multiple times, right? At that point, it's like, well, they've earned that in a sense. The problem is like with the initial best of 1s, and then if you're first after the best of 1s, you can just win 1 best of 3 and you won your group, or whatever the way it is. Like, that makes it a bit more weird.
Yeah, I know what you're
easier
saying.
to just kind of luck out. But I don't know. For me, Blast, I remember even like when they first came around, and I think they were throwing around like, or talking about potentially like the F1 circuit and trying to be a little bit like that. I think that's what they should sort of go for, right? Like, you have an event like the Lisbon one, where I'm sure every time they come back, they could bring a respectable crowd. I think they're building a sort of a kind of thing there for themselves.
A mainstay there, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I think probably you want to get rid of the fucking groups. Like, why should there be, like, fuck the group stage? Like, just do a tournament, let's say, in Madrid, right? With the problem is they have like 12
right?
partner teams, right? So either you find a way to add 4 more teams, and just kind of expand your thing, so there's 16 team tournaments all the way up to the World Finals, which then you can make 8 and double elimination best of 3 all the way, and that's a Royal Arena.
Come on, guys.
Event. What?
This is where we have an obligation to provide the extra context of saying that's an expensive ask. Those are easy suggestions to make if you don't have to sign the bills. We all know those considerations go into why these tournaments are formatted the way they are. And if you look at it from the TO perspective, going from saying, hey, we want to have this group stage for 2 weeks in our home studio that we own in Copenhagen for long periods of time that we already have set up, and now rent out an arena or a studio in Madrid, fly everyone out to Madrid, get all the contractors and all the partners to be able to get the shuttle services and all the catering. All of a sudden, you've turned this into a studio show that Blast owns and doesn't have to pay for each and every time, and now you've turned it into like a multi-million-dollar affair. And let's at least bring that context up,
but
because
that's their fault for them deciding to set it up that way, in a way that doesn't really make much sense. Do you have a feeling like it's a fucking circuit, Jason?
Why don't you use that excuse for ESL, you fucking blast shill?
I do. I use that shit for ESL all the time. I talk about that shit all the time when we talk about that kind of stuff. But let's not sit here and just be like, hey, let's, this organizer should all of a sudden just have turn this into a multi-million-dollar affair instead of like the studio show they currently have it as.
They can do it. I'm just saying what would make more sense from
Yeah, and it's fine. And I agree. If it was a perfect world, let's do something like that. But I just want the context to be there for the viewer that. Because we know these conversations from being involved with other TOs as well, and even hearing from ESL people from time to time is part of the reason why some of the formats are the way they are, is because teams want to demand a certain amount of exposure that they're going to have. It's why it's so hard in a bunch of these group stages for various events. The format requires that there are a certain number of matches so that the teams have enough time on the stream to bring value to their brand. And that is a huge piece of context for why formats are the way they are.
But that's why, I'm sitting here going, well, then we just got to accept this franchising shit, and then that's just the way it is. But does that come with any negative attention, right? Because when you compare it to an open circuit, right? This is the thing that doesn't get spoken about because people just want to fucking vilify it all the time. But the amount of stuff that ESL does for the entire ecosystem of Counter-Strike comparatively to what Blast does, it's not even close, right? They're running events all over the world, literally all over the world, different ESEA leagues, ESEA Cash Cups, ESL Impact, right? Yeah. I'm just getting started. National Championship leagues all over the place. This is all an extension of ESL, right? And how much they do for the broader ecosystem of Counter-Strike. But none of that ever gets spoken about. The cunts just get vilified to death. They're just burned to the fucking stake. And we're talking about this, and Yanko's bringing up, it's a pretty outlandish suggestion with all the extra cash it's going to take here. But if we're looking at where money's being spent and where praise is going, ESL get none of it for what they do for the greater landscape of Counter-Strike. Blast is getting all this prep for hype for putting on the most closed tournament, right, in their home court and smashing it to the high standard they continue to deliver. But it's easier for them to deliver that high level. So here's what I'm hearing from the community if I'm ESL. Close down all the community shit, just run the franchise shit, focus all of our attention into that so we're not spread so thin. We can pour all of our resources, which are millions more than what Blast have. And if we just do that, well, I think we all know that the product won't be better, but in fairy tale land, it should be better, right? So if I'm ESL, why don't I just do that? What's the point of running everything else and keeping it all open? Because we're talking Yanko's trying to give a suggestion where Blast actually tries to help out the greater ecosystem as opposed to just the partner team. But if we as the community are happy with just franchise leagues, which is the sentiment I'm getting right now, fuck it, pack it all in. The majors can be the only open circuit thing. Everything else fucking closed. You can all fight for yourself and make your own shit in your LAN centers at home.
Well, I wasn't even talking about what they could do for the greater ecosystem or just for themselves to potentially make the product more appealing and even to the viewers and just more cool in a sense, right? And make it just also more sensible in a way, right? Because there's a bit of a disconnect right now. If it's supposed to be group stages into finals, into all of this leading into the world finals, it's these world finals aren't really going to be that much hype. It doesn't feel right? I know how it was. I've been at the first ones in Bahrain with FaZe, right? And it's for us, it was actually pretty important because we won 2 Blast events that year. We were the number 1 ranked team, I think, in coming into the, because of their points, right? But, and we were cognizant about, wanting to do good there, and that could have been a nice end to the season. Didn't really pan out that way. But, you're still in a place with a couple of hundred people. It doesn't have the level of, that's why I say it makes more sense for that to be the Royal Arena. So this was also a way of sort of kind of coming up with something where you could make that Royal Arena event the World Final, and it would make sense, and you would have the teams who perform the best throughout the year there.
Yeah, even if you did the group stage thing, like you could still do a group stage, still do it in the studio. But let's say like they have the 12 teams Janko's talking about. You could bring in 4 teams and do 2 groups with 8 teams, right? And in terms of the amount of extra time you're talking about, it's not a lot. In terms of the amount for the extra teams, okay, well, it's 4 extra teams and they're not partnered, but it immediately changes the way your whole event looks. And you could customly pick the 4 teams that you want to come to your fucking group stage and make your group stage even more exciting. Yo, we've got the previous major champions. We've got the next highest rated team in the world. We've got fucking, I don't know, everybody loves Cloud9. Cloud9's here, and you know whoever the wild card is, and you pick these teams, you bring them into your group stage. Now, sure, some of your partner teams have to fight off non-partner teams for their spot. That actually makes it more exciting. If you take that from a broadcast angle, we've got the previous major champion coming in to challenge our squad, right? If it ends up not being one of the partner teams, you could even start framing that in your own advantage. And you could run that from the environment you were talking about, Jason. And I know it's more money. And I know that Blast spend a lot of money because their stuff's quality. And we always wonder where this money's coming from. So that's another problem in itself. But like I think like a couple of little tweaks to what they have right now to make it slightly more open, right? Not very much, but just slightly. And then at that point, you just with the framing, if the majors get moved in 2024, then Blast end the year with the Copenhagen event as their world final or whatever, and it'd be fucking sick. And then that event can be on the same or the pedestal as the Katowices and the Colognes, which is what you hear the players talking about it, right? They're talking about, we know that they've won the Katowice or Cologne, but this you hear this is a spoken about thing from the players. That it's not something that we just say is a good event. Like they have this amount of respect, and this event is primed, perfectly ready. Like it's just there, like it's just dangling just below, and it can be right there. It's one of those legendary mainstay events every year with a couple of tweaks to the overall, and I think that's what we want, because we get another one of those, Katowice, Cologne, 2 majors, and Copenhagen in a year that we can Lisbon. Be relatively and Lisbon has a good turnout as well. You look at those, they have great turnouts for events. I don't know if we need too many more of those, mate. We don't need to keep doing this fucking spectacle bullshit because we want mainstream media, the NBC or CBS or whatever, to pick it up and run a new... Like, well, we're fucking past those days.
This was a conversation we used to have like pre-COVID, when literally every event was in an arena, and it eventually just got to the point where it was like numb being inside those arenas because it was everything. It was like, I know... For I don't know if the community would feel the same way, but for us, it was kind of like, man, we kind of miss like going to those smaller, like 2,000, 3,000 person, like little theaters that are a lot more intimate. You get to play with the crowd a little bit more. It's not this massive arena. You can still have a really, really cool show. And obviously the scale is small enough to make it a little bit more smarter in terms of cash that a TO is burning as well.
I would love it if we had a mix of this, mate. Like what you're bringing up here is perfect. We just named 5 events in a year, 6 events, sorry, that are like going to be arena scale events with thousands of people, like, or closer to the tens of thousands of people, right, as opposed to the low thousands. But then like a Dallas, for example, we know we have a harder time in America filling out these spaces. So why don't we just get a smaller space that we know we can fill out with, the 3,000 to 4,000, and on top of that, we change the way we try and do the show to offer something different. Right, to offer a different viewing experience as opposed to this all like concert style stuff where we're going to a music act. We change up the way that the viewer can. And I know that Blast experimented before with that in LA. It's hard to pull off with the format they had. Maybe it could be different if they didn't need to run so many games at the same time. But let's say Dallas, for example, for next year for ESL, if they could find a space like a I know this is America, so this would be harder to find, but like an indoor soccer thing or like an indoor handball thing, right? Those are normally a couple of thousand people. You could, do something, change up the viewing experience in a way. Like I'm obviously simplifying a lot of this, but then you do what you were saying as well before, Janko, and it's something we've spoken about on this show a lot. With Pro League can be different. It could be a different vibe. We've spoken about it being like a more buttoned up version of like a Summit vibe, right? Where it's still casual on the couches, trying to have as much player personality as possible, but we're not there for the spectacle. We're there for obviously the Counter-Strike, which is always paramount, but then more player personality, more player interaction in those environments where we can connect them to the viewer at home in more of a personal and more maybe of a fun nature. And then we have the big arena events, which are like the pinnacles of our months and throughout the year. And then we have these other smaller like stadium events, which is like touch-up events to kind of see where teams are at, playing in a different environment. Maybe the viewer gets something a little bit different. Like all of those things now, I'm excited. I want there to be a bunch of different shit to watch in a bunch of different ways. And we're not even talking about the format in the game. We're just talking about the way to watch the game or the way that the game is presented to the viewer. And we're fucking onto it. We've cracked the code, boys. Sign the check. We're doing all of it.
We've done it. When do I get paid?
Right now.
The invoice is in the mail. No, the check is in the mail. You need to send the invoice to me. But yeah, I don't know. Like, I think this is the thing again, and we touched on it last week, just like the evolution of this. We're constantly changing. We're constantly evolving. And I think having these kind of conversations, I don't know, this helps me flesh out how I think about this. And that's why I brought up a bit before, wanting to hear from the viewers of what they want, because I know it's not going to be up to them entirely at the end of the day. It's what the events are going to be able to put out there, what the teams are going to be able to do, what Valve kind of have impact on. But they're the ones consuming this. And
we have to kind of tailor some of our ideas around the way that they consume the content and the kind of content that they want to consume.
Yeah, and I know that a lot of them are reasonable. I'd say a lot of the ones that listen to our podcast are reasonable human beings. Funny that.
You're all reasonable and excellent human beings out there.
But they're the ones who probably watch and go, okay, yeah, look, I understand that they have to have this sponsor integration or this ad has to play here. And they're not the ones who are going, oh, a Twitch ad, I don't get to watch the free content that they built in that time, right? Like, because I know that some people, I can't watch the content. It's like, well, it's meant to be an ad break. They've just put content here because most of you use ad block, right? So they've put something there because you guys were complaining there was nothing in the downtime that is in traditional media meant to be an ad break, which we had in buckets and spades on TVs when we were kids, right? Maybe we have a different viewpoint of that because when we were kids, it wasn't like things were on demand. You had to put in a fucking VHS tape or a DVD, right, to watch something through without adverts. If you watched anything on free-to-air TV, even on cable TV, they had fucking ads in Australia. Did you boys just have shitloads of ads on TV before everything went on demand on the internet?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we have, like, and if we're dealing with younger generation now, they're just used to having, like, the constant scroll of TikTok, right? Yeah?
No, I was just going to say there was this, like, skill that you needed to have after a while where you could, like, kind of, based on the channel, you knew how long the ad break was. So if you were really living life on the edge, you would switch the channel while the ads were on to, look at something meaningful, but still come back before they were over so you don't miss anything and then wonder if you missed an important part of the movie.
I'd always forget to turn back. I'd get too captivated in whatever I flick to, Sometimes you get too focused on something else and you never come back.
Shit happens when you party
tapes.
naked.
I've really gone boomer, haven't I? Talking about VHS tapes and shit.
Yeah, you have there. You took it into an old place.
Watching Aladdin and stuff. Rewinding the favorite songs.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it'd be interesting to hear like from listeners and viewers like what kind of stuff they want. But it's kind of hard, right? Because you can easily kind of get sidetracked into, we asked this question and we're gonna get the hardcore Counter-Strike opinion.
Yeah,
we're gonna get the hardcore Counter-Strike fans, and there's a lot more that watch Counter-Strike. And I guess this kind of takes it back to some of the questions you had earlier on. Are fans actually okay with just the franchise only leagues? Because it is a situation where, like, the franchise teams are franchise teams because they have the biggest draw. Those are the teams that are always going to bring in the most viewership, and part of it is they have the most established players. They have players that have been around long enough to where most of the community understands their story and is kind of invested in their careers to a certain extent. So I think a couple things can kind of break that up. I think we as a Counter-Strike community and with working with the TOs, we can make a lot better content in terms of, this is something I've always been harping on for the last couple of years and on this podcast for sure, is doing a better job of building the stories of the teams and the players that aren't your partner teams and that are kind of rising up through the ranks. Like, now's a perfect time to have like a huge deep dive from TOs to really recap and hit hard the stories of the heroic players. Why aren't we going back and like doing the stories of this rise of heroic? Let's go back and look at all the fucking issues that they've had to encounter over the past 4 years to get to this point. It'd be a perfect time to build up a fan base for this heroic team, and then you hope that building up that fan base then converts them into viewers for your main broadcast. But TOs at the moment aren't like their emphasis isn't on that kind of content.
Well, they can't pivot that quickly, right? Like, and also.
Well, they could, but yeah.
Well, they don't. The companies we're talking about, Blast and ESL, both don't have the resources to do that. Like, ESL have the resources, they're just elsewhere.
Yeah, they don't put the focus and energy on that.
Yeah, and Blast only have a crew that can maybe do an event at a time, maybe 1.5 events, right? Like, they're kind of but like, is what you're saying something that should be done more by our news websites? Because our TOs don't really push narratives year long. You have the meme lords who work on their Twitter accounts and shit, and put up stuff, tweets every now and again. But like they don't push like greater Counter-Strike narratives here. And I don't know if
I don't think it fits into any of their business plans or any of their like
none of their
financial
avenues,
plans on how
right?
to make money. Yeah, but I mean, in my mind, that's an easy thing for TOs to get into. I'd love to see HLTV do it more, but again, like the TOs have all the cameras and the content around at all times to be able to actually make it something unique and special and use good footage. And I don't know, I'm assuming HLTV could probably get easy enough access to it, but I also don't know if that's in HLTV's long-term plan to be that kind of a website,
Yeah,
I would love it if they were.
Stuff like what we're doing here, the bridge of the gap. The problem is, like, we couldn't go and do we could do this Counter-Strike talk show that we're doing right now in like a live set environment, but that would mean that the three of us would all have to live somewhere, or you'd have to have staff available who would live somewhere to be able to go in and do these things, right? To do those like football type shows where everybody gets together, even when the football's not on for that week, right? You're putting out an episode of that every week. We're not together to do that. We're doing our version of that, which is a podcast. And right, like obviously webcam podcasts, they're very popular out there and whatnot. But like there's nothing that beats actually having people in a room being able to see each other. And I can see when Yanko, he's pissed off, or I can see when Jason, has something to interject with and whatnot. Like you can see those things. But we would need to change our environment of how we live and everything like that. And that's another whole consideration of how a lot of that would be told. Because having people like edit videos and throw it together, you can check the numbers. Like a lot of these story pieces they just don't get a lot of where they live. They live and die there on YouTube. They don't get like a whole lot of traction. Like both of these big companies put out so much content. Like, and we're a big part of like either helping curate it or help build it or help script it. And a lot of the stuff, like I don't know how many viewers you need to make any of this shit worthwhile. I don't know. Like we did that skit, Yanko, where Harry gets the sunscreen on his face. It got 20K views on YouTube. It was funny on broadcast for when it got played, but then after that, it got 20K views on YouTube. Well, it's 19K. It was 3 weeks ago, and that's it. Like, a lot of time went into that. We spent a whole day filming that. There are people who had to edit it. We had 3 people there. We had one guy doing sound, one guy on the camera, Frank there directing it. We had Kinga there doing makeup, right? Like, a lot of time went into that to create something that got 20K views. It's like, okay.
Yeah, but it also takes time for people to get used to that, right? And I guess also probably for the algorithm to do its little thingy, right? Like I feel if we just keep at those, right, and keep creating those kits, and people are used to those being out more regularly, and then they're also like, like this is like pretty funny or pretty interesting or whatever, where can I see more of this? And then they head to the YouTube channel and they find all this content that they can consume and engage with. I think that's where you're going to see a growth in those numbers as well.
How do we crack Counter-Strike on TikTok? That's the $1 million question for our industry right now.
Shocks in here.
Ask Banks and Pimp. They got thriving TikTok accounts.
Okay, well there you go. Because like that's truly it, right? Like TikTok is right now taking a lot of people. To be fair, it's such low.
But again, short form content like that is such a fucking kick in my dick. I fucking hate that shit.
It's low year. Like it's like what? Yeah. It's like flash in
I
your
have
face.
no interest in creating content that's like that short, thoughtless, blah.
Wow, you've just upset a lot of TikTok creators. I'm sure.
I don't even give a fuck.
I'm sure he doesn't mean to offend all of you.
Mate,
who do
I've never met
really
a single
nice
person developing a thriving TikTok account that actually enjoyed it, and that includes Pimp and Banks.
Wow. Okay. Well, they've just been outed here, live and direct, talking counter.
No, I think they'd tell you themselves. It's a pain in the ass. Like,
well, we're not going to ask for
social media.
permission. That's out there, Jason. That's staying. That's not getting deleted. We don't edit anything here. Nothing at all.
That's fun. Nothing ever.
At all.
Yeah, what else we got? What else we got in the Counter-Strike world? Device is about to play.
I saw that. I was flicking through the news. That's good. I'm glad that he's about to play. That's about it. I don't know what people's expectations are. They probably shouldn't be too high.
CCT is very happy.
Yeah, that's good. Good for them to get. As I'm scrolling through this, the one that sticks out to me: video pros comment on Anubis replacing Dust 2. If there's anything, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls at home, not to waste your time on, it's that video that HLTV put out. I wouldn't even recommend going anywhere near that link, because you're going to hear pros say, "The map sucks. Why didn't they put in old map X?" But remember, I haven't even played Anubis, and that's what you're going to hear. That's going to be the responses you're going to get, and you're going to get nothing meaningful from that video at all, unfortunately. What else is? Are you excited about Anubis? I'm sorry, not Anubis. Astralis with Device. I'm not excited because it's like there still has to be changes in that team, right? This isn't the team. The team isn't Device, Mr. Blamef, Zipex, and Glaive, is it? Is that the team?
No, there's got to be one more. I feel at least one more.
You do love how we were talking about this specifically like 3-4 episodes ago, when I was saying like, you know, you just blow up the team now, get Staren's iPhone, or, you know, at least Staren, then maybe whatever. And then we were talking about Zipex and just saying, you know, this motherfucker is just gonna have like a good tournament out of nowhere or a couple good games, and then people in Astralis are gonna be like, maybe he still has it, maybe he can still do it, and then just make one change, because making 2 changes will probably require more funds that they can afford at this time, right? So then it's just going to be, well, just bring one guy and, you know, keep Zipex around for this one last sort of hurrah. And
The last dance, as it were.
He did play way better, right? At the, what was it? The thing that they played.
Alyssa.
Alyssa,
ESPU.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Espo. That's the one, not ESPU. But they said something like he got a lot more of his roles and stuff back, and they were using Blame more aggressively, right? So that makes sense in itself.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But still, it's just funny because we were talking about something like that. But yeah, unless they just change the academy player for someone legit, then I am just, why again are teams making like, you know, teams invest a lot of money and make like, let's say even a good change, and then there's just this one last piece that they don't change to really make it, you know, all make sense. It's like either go for it all or don't do anything.
Yeah, I don't know. This is the same thing with like Na'Vi, who are going to use MPL, right? Like the kid might be great. He might be able to step in and be sick, but it's another one of these situations where we go, okay, it's Na'Vi. You expect them maybe to go for somebody a bit more established, but then you go down the rabbit hole of that conversation. Traditionally, it's been hard for them to buy players. That's probably why they find themselves here now. Like,
I mean, with Na'Vi, I don't have a big of an issue because they have a proven track record of bringing in young players that turned out to be fucking amazing that we've almost haven't even heard about.
That's
or would have put 5 names at the very least before that player that you would think is way better on paper. I know you were, you know, mentioning Hobbit potentially coming to, you know, Na'Vi would be like a great fit and would be really cool for them. And you look at it on paper and yeah, absolutely. And then they come up with like fucking Ilya from a village in Russia, and, you know, he's like the sickest aimer we've seen or something like that.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with what you're saying. Yeah, I guess that's a good point because they have experience of being able to do this and it's worked. So I guess, you know, they've already shown the proof there. So that's going to be curious to see if they'll be able to do it again. I don't know. I'm still, I guess my standpoint is, is this the actual Astralis team? And then I guess if it ends up being the actual Astralis team, then maybe, you know, I need to give a bit more focus to them playing in this CCT North Europe 2. But it shows like kind of where they are as a team,
CCTV,
right?
CCTV, like it's so weird.
Well, they are being watched by all of us.
I'm excited for it, but I don't think in any way I don't have like any crazy expectations. I think I have more realistic expectations of how it's going to go, and it's going to start slow, and it's going to take 6 months, I feel, for him to get back into the swings. I saw Device this weekend actually.
Oh yeah, did you say hello?
Yeah, he was hanging around the roller arena. Yeah, I said hi real quick.
That's cool. I saw. Yeah, he put something up on his Instagram story. They were there doing a signing session as well,
the people,
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was cool. There's definitely they had that show match as well that went on there. That a lot of people seem to enjoy that. That's one of the things that I think Blast are doing well is the way that they're with this Blast TV platform. They're trying to get people over.
Oh, that platform is actually sick.
Yeah, it's wise, right? Because they're giving people a lot to do there. So not only do you just come there to watch the stream, they do try and have a bunch of fun games and things for you to be interacted in. Now, look, boys, I'm going to shine my own wheels here for a second.
Here we go.
But that show match, I think in contrast, you know, was a good show match compared to what we had of the Brazilians tryharding in Rio. But the greatest show matches of all time are the Caches.
It's nowhere close to the Caches, was
and
it?
it's like, I don't know how people forgot about the Caches, guys. Like, I see Blast putting out a title on the YouTube video, the greatest show match of all time, ? Come on now. Like, if you're not gonna give a little bit of something to the people who, you know, put on the greatest show match of all time. Now, look, it's got nothing to do with ESL. Don't worry, it's got nothing to do with ESL. It's got to do with the creative genius of our collective group of individuals given some freedom to have some fun and put on the cashes multiple years in Australia and the Australian crowd mainly. Or actually probably mainly the Australian crowd. So look, I will take issue with that claim. And I don't know if I have any objections here, but I would gladly have a debate right now.
I think if we had I think what people don't understand about the caches is how much that was just kind of like thrown together last minute by you guys as talent. Yeah. If we had like the resources
I know, you tell
one
me,
of the
mate.
current TOs invested into it, like I think the caches could come back in a big way. In a big way.
Oh yeah, I love the caches. I thought it was awesome. I was around for most of that. Like, you and Henry just coming up with outrageous stuff. Even in Copenhagen, the studio, like the whole kind of intro to it. And yeah, Lipton's is probably one of my favorite moments, bits.
Did we lose? We lost Chad.
Okay. Oh,
we lost Chad, Yanko. So we're just gonna keep going with this.
DEF CON, whatever, Jason. It's like the lower the number is, the more serious it is.
Yeah, it's the Maltese internet over there has had a rough go with things.
Like
but yeah, I think
yeah, I was just
I
like,
think
how
the
long do I
Caches
have
was a
to
great
keep
show match.
saying nice things about his show match before he chimes in and steps in and like.
Now's the
takes
time
over?
to dumpster it while he's not fucking here. He just texted his power went out. He says he might have lost the whole recording. Lightning and thunder. So
Maybe we should
we'll
have kept recording on TeamSpeak as a contingency just in case.
Yeah, I
on
know.
both you and
Just in
him.
case. Oh well. Well, yeah. So it's just going to be the two of us to close this one out. So maybe we just switch into some final thoughts.
Yeah. Anything you want to talk about from Blast? Maybe that we didn't touch on really. I don't know.
No, not really. I was bored in my hotel room one night and I was like skimming through pictures and photos from the wedding, and I have this incredible video of you hanging out with a bunch of Green Bay Packers fans at the late night bar.
I thought your friend was gonna kick the shit out of me. Like he didn't seem too happy about
Which
that.
one?
Paul.
About you talking to the Packers? Paul? No, he
Yeah,
doesn't
I
give a
thought
shit.
Paul was really mad towards you. And me and Paul got along so well up until that point.
Yeah,
Then I
he's
ran
a
into
cool dude,
some
but
cheesehead somehow in fucking Michigan on a...
wearing fucking overalls and bright orange hats.
Yeah.
And you're there in a
And I
suit.
said I was going to buy them around, so they sent us around because that's apparently a thing that they have to like kind of...
Yeah, they sent us a bucket of PBRs,
Yeah.
America's only blue ribbon beer back in 1897.
Pabst Blue Ribbon, man.
It's a beautiful beer.
Okay. Maybe. But,
I mean,
but
it's a
yeah,
hipster beer.
We'll add that to the collection. Obviously.
But yeah, I don't really know. I don't really have a whole lot on Counter-Strike at the moment. My brain's a little fried from
I
the
know.
travel.
I feel. It's been like that for me for a week, man. Like I don't.
I'm excited to get to the end of this year. I think everyone is excited to get. I'm talking to all the players, and everyone's like excited for this last event coming up, and then to just get home and take a fucking break.
Yeah, it is weird how it is, like, because even though, let's say, you maybe are not at a tournament, you didn't qualify or skip the tournament or something, so you have a little bit extra time between travels, between tournaments, between competitions, like, it's still, you're on, right? Like, for me, that was the big difference between talent and coach is, like, when you're talent, when you're home, you're off. Like, you're free. Your whole time is yours. Obviously, we have a little bit of work here and there, right? But you can, do that whenever you want. You can plan your own time. Meanwhile, when you're coaching, it's like, yeah, you're not at the tournament, but there's still practice. Even if the players might have time off, like you still need to, review shit, come up with new things, look at like what are the things in your game that you have to work on, what are things you need to change, what are some of the new stuff, like the new tactics, the new strategies you need to come up with. So it's just like constant, it's just nonstop. And obviously, there's a little bit of that feeling, even when you do say, even for yourself, it's like, okay, guys, we have like, 2-3 days off now after the tournament before we get into it again. There's like more time between tournaments. You still feel like you still catch yourself like, you're hanging out or whatever, wherever, and you're still like thinking about CS because you lost this fucking game, due to this little thing, and then you have thought of a way to fix that, and kind of, came up with a new protocol, a new routine to, whatever. It's actually just constant, never ending.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. And I think we don't have it to the same extent. And I felt the same way when I was coaching as well. You don't actually get like time off because your brain is always trying to fix some problem or try and figure out where the focus is going to be when you return. I know I was talking to like Trace a little bit when I was in Copenhagen. And I was just like, man, I'm so jealous your year's over. I can't wait to go home and just like sit on a couch and have a couple days where I just don't have to think about fucking anything. And he's like, yeah, it's nice. But I also know, and he said the same thing. It's like he's bored. And it's the same thing that like when we were on like the hardcore grind, like pre-COVID, was like when your body is so used to just like being at an event, or like being gone for like 4 weeks and then coming home for a week and then getting back on the road immediately, like that, it takes so long for your body and your brain to like truly shut the fuck off, like to just like your brain is constantly keeping you somewhat motivated to get back on the road and go do the next thing. And it takes a while for that to switch off.
Yeah. And it's when you do kind of mess up how you handle jet lag, for example, like that period of adjustment can extend.
Yep.
And that's pretty annoying, but yeah, that's why I liked it. I always say, people say like for relationship and stuff, it's also hard, right? Like you're away all the time. Like, listen, I think this dynamic is actually perfect for a relationship. It's like you go work for whatever, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 10 days, whatever it is, at different times, right? You just start getting homesick a little bit, missing all the people and so on. You get back, it's great, like, everyone's missed you, you missed everyone, you have a good time, you catch up, you're home for like 10 days, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever it is. And then, you start getting a little bit bored. Like you've seen all the people, you went to all your spots, and now it's time to go again. Like go work again, go to a tournament. So it keeps things fresh in a way. Yeah,
for sure. Okay. Let's end it on that note because we're gonna wait for Chad to give us the all clear if his file is ruined or not. So we might have to do this all over again. Well,
World Finals is in 2 weeks, so we still have time before that. And yeah, we'll see.
Beautiful.
Let's hope, Chad.
Hope and pray.
Let's hope it's safe.
GG's.
All right.